Hi, Casey. Hi, Wade. Thanks for joining us again.
Hello.
Good. We're already recording. It is 6 o'clock according to my Verizon cell phone. We're up to about 85 participants. I'm going to give it another minute.
All
I'll
right.
go over some general rules. We will have a hard stop at 7-ish, as this is our second meeting, and we'll also announce that we'll be having further meetings, setting up further meetings with administrators and parents in the coming weeks, including building principals and all of that stuff as we get a better handle. So
We're going to do a sped one too, right, Joe?
yeah, we'll do a special education 5041. We'll probably do our ELL, since it's a smaller population of English language learners, a little differently, but I think it's important that we communicate with them the same hot topics that are going on with everyone. And then we'll do principal 11 meetings. I anticipate to start those in about 2 weeks.
Great.
Survey results, I didn't get an update today, but I'll share some of that with folks. All right, so good evening to everyone. Please feel free to ask your questions. Just a couple of, I'll take a few minutes to do some intros. I'm Joe Bida, Superintendent of Norton Public Schools. We have Cassandra Russo, she goes by Casey Russo, our coordinator of special education, former team chairperson at the LGN, and prior to that in a number of collaboratives in private schools and public schools as well. And Wade Lozada, director of facilities, who is running around crazy right now with all the moves and everything else that we're trying to do. But Wade's on it with us in case questions about HVAC systems and all of that comes up, because that's always the big one. In the next few days, you will all be receiving via an email our plan that we have published with the state. That plan continues to be a working document. We have to publish it by Friday, but specifically based on individual needs of students, such as special education, 504, student transcripts at the secondary level. We are continuously working on the schedules to try to minimize changes for students. I do not seek at this time to change our electives program and or our specials like art and music, technology, library, in all of those core areas at the secondary level, at the elementary level, that I believe are an integral part of teaching and learning. So right now I don't see any changes to that. Within the hybrid model, we are working on both synchronous and asynchronous. So when students are home, the potential through streaming of being in the classroom, that is a task and a half for many reasons. One, new technology we would have to purchase. And two, under Chapter 150E, I have to collectively bargain any changes to the working conditions of teachers. So therefore, I have to basically come to a resolution that that's acceptable. For students who are in the full remote, that's another issue, because we're being asked to support families while at the same time we really don't have secondary staff. We'll be utilizing people that are taking leaves of absence. The leave of absence process for staff has started. We are starting to see the numbers tick up on a daily basis due to FMLA and ADA compliance, both federal laws as well as the FMLA CARES Act. To date, as of yesterday, I can tell you that we have approximately 150 students in pre-K through 12 plus that have actually requested, or families who have actually requested remote only. So that's of about 1,359 surveys as of yesterday. So we've got about 1,000 surveys still out there, so over 50% response. People are looking for specifics, and I have to tell you that really can't happen in some ways without actually knowing what the numbers are. Planning for remote, hybrid, and full return is what we've been doing, but it means something different to each and every family. So we've started with sibling groups as a way to try to support families. Today I met with champions about offering remote days support to families on the hybrid model or in the remote model. I'm working with another private company, all of these at the minimum cost. In the case of champions, we're also working to support our teachers. So we released some information to teachers and staff today that Champions is available to them. And then probably the biggest headache is busing in terms of who's taking busing, who's not, and that's part of the survey. So we're getting information on what that means for our buses. I think long-term we're going to be okay. but that's subject to change on a regular basis. We are currently working to finalize the second type of planning, which is in this binder right now, which is everything to do with our reopening plan for facilities and operations, special education, protocols for a scenario in school and or classroom and or district, transportation model, food services in the classroom, out of the classroom, and to go, and for remote, and implementing social emotional learning within our curriculum because of potential anxiety. We're getting a lot of different communications about that topic. Extra requirements for science labs areas. And then the last one, because of the way that science labs work with a lot of students using the same stuff, and then additional guidance on chorus, band, theater, dance, visual arts, and physical education. We currently still do not have any guidance on, specific guidance on athletics, clubs and activities, intramurals. We still do not have that in our programming from the state. I've been asked about things like supply lists in this morning's meetings. Please hold off on supplies. I will put out a statement about that on when the time is. I'm sure that there's sales and stuff going on, but I don't want you to overspend on things because teaching remotely and hybrid is a little different. So you could be purchasing things that you really may not need. So I'll send out some information on that soon. We are looking at a policy, implementing a policy through the school committee on the idea of masks and that they have to be worn at all times. And if students don't wear their mask because of, quote, their First Amendment right, I think Norton will be the first district in court because I will not be allowing for students not to wear masks or staff unless there's documentation around behavior and or medical that needs to take place. And I'm standing firm on that because I think this is about all of us together. I know that there's a lot of different views on this. I respect those views, but there are options available such as remote learning and you don't have to come to school. That said, it's important for us to try to find those middle grounds. I want to be clear to students and to the parents tonight. Every student situation is different. We will look at that when it comes to masks. I know about students who have certain learning disabilities and the issues of masks that comes with it, but I urge you to begin planning for masks on a regular basis. Spend an hour at home with your child doing it, making sure that they're wearing it when they go out. Any of that would be a great support for us. It's all about practice, good hygiene, and supporting each other. I've been asked about gaiters versus masks. Gaiters are the pull-ups. Well, probably after my meeting this afternoon, after asking that question, it looks like gaiters are not going to be a priority. Only masks will be, but I'll have some further information on that. I've been asked that a lot in the last 24 hours, so I reached out to those in the know. And then lastly, there's a video that was sent out today from me, from my communications office on Edgenuity, which is the remote learning platform for 6 to 12. It's a specific video. The second video link in particular is the link that's called the library. It has a very detailed kind of the time management with students, the expectations of students, who will be checking up on students in terms of that's our issue. You can see the supplemental materials, the enrichment materials, the libraries that they have, if you will. So hopefully you'll be able to spend a few minutes doing that and looking at that. We plan to also try to put together a training for our families before our students begin with any of this and all of this. Our separate programs in special education will be going to school remotely on Monday and 4 days a week. We've been having a lot of questions, and I'm going to turn this over to Casey to just give you a little synopsis of the sub-separate and then non-sub-separate, which we're getting questions on, and then individual learning plans.
Hi. So in terms of the in-person, hybrid, remote models, we are focusing on our sub-separate programs and our other high-need students in terms of coming back 4 days. That would include the Little Lancers Preschool as well. So we're looking at Tuesday through Friday for all 4 of those programs. Like Mr. Bayad was just saying, that Monday will be the remote day for all those programs. In terms of students who are not in specialized programs, we'll be looking at the IEP grids to see the level of services that they have. and whether or not they meet the PL3 placement is what the DESD is guiding us towards. Again, if there's the teams will be looking at individual student needs as we get closer. There may be some students who are kind of on that borderline that we really feel should be in person more, or other needs that may arise on an individualized basis for students. But otherwise, they will be assigned to different cohorts. So we're working very diligently to make sure that we are following inclusion ratios for all students. So it's not just all special needs students in cohort A and then general ed in cohort B. We're really working hard to make sure that there's enough diversity amongst all of the cohorts to make it as equitable and normal really as possible for all of our kids. For those kids that are doing hybrid for our special needs populations, we're going to have them included on the in-person cohort days. They'll be in the inclusion classrooms as much as possible. And then we'll try to do their services on those days as well, as much in person as possible. But we are going to be doing a combination for related services of in-person, teletherapy, as well as Google or Zoom meets, however we can set it up. But service delivery will be meant for every student in some capacity to the best of our ability.
Thanks, Casey. When we get to the questions, I'm just going to go down the line and give you a general read of what the first question has to do on remote learning. It's important to know the teacher who's assigned to it in terms of familiarity with grade level and curriculum. That is very true. You will have that information available to us as soon as we know how many students per grade we're actually having to remote teach, how many teachers we're going to need. So in pre-K through 5, we can generally get away with 1 teacher per student because those teachers in general are responsible for literacy, numeracy, science, social studies. It would be the specials teachers that we would have to find other ways. When you get to the secondary level, it's all about content. A teacher is licensed in a content, they're not licensed in every area, and most teachers don't have multiple certifications. So an English teacher might be licensed in 5 to 12, and they could teach middle school English and high school English. In most of our cases, we don't have staff that's actually done that in any way. But again, that would give us a grade level curriculum person around the content areas. In terms of grading materials, that's a combination of online assessments as well as teacher assessments, and that's what we have to try to come up with. Edgenuity is adaptable to learning speeds. Students within the system can actually move. The system doesn't allow for students to move within Edgenuity. For example, if it thinks it's moving too fast and it's not completing the tasks the way they should be, the system will actually put up an error. I've actually seen it happening because some students say they did the work to mom and dad and you think they did it, or I think they did it as a parent and they didn't do it. And it also keeps you with up-to-date grades on a regular basis, etc. It is not necessarily the same exact curriculum, but it is our curriculum in terms of how we connect it to the Massachusetts framework. So our curriculum is based on the frameworks for Massachusetts. Edgenuity's state alignment is the same, but they may be utilizing, for example, a different type of social studies text or reading assignments than we would be using. The modules assigned to students is going to be the biggest issue. That's one of the questions. Those modules as assigned on the full remote days would be to go along with the course. So they would be pretty much done on a bigger picture, if you will. Here's what students need to do within the next 7 days. Well, if you're looking at any support from Edgenuity on the remote days within the hybrid model, then we would have to pick and choose individual lessons on a regular, pretty regular basis. Edgenuity and marketing for those that are making up work or catching up. That is a great statement. Edgenuity is also NCAA certified for all advanced placement classes that they offer. In other words, they've gone through the same rigorous response of creating a syllabus that every high school teacher has to do when they create one. I know that because I used to be an AP teacher. And so it's not just a catch-up or a make-up work, it also has the enhancements. For example, I've had students take computer science on it because we didn't offer it. We've had students take a Latin class because we don't offer Latin. So it's also done beyond just catching up and make-up. Remote times for remote days only or remote time for hybrid. So on both cases, we are trying to establish specific schedules for your children by school, so that it's not just you as a parent saying, come on, Johnny, you got to get on. No, it's going to be, all right, we want you to work on your English from 8:15 to 9:15. We want you to work on your math, etc. And that's where finding and having another person to support that is very, very important. Cohorts are being set up, first of all, by sibling groups as much as we can, then by making sure that our classrooms continue to be fully inclusive classrooms per the Office of Civil Rights, and then we'll take a look at some of the suggestions being made, alphabetical, by the same bus pickup, and so on and so forth. When do we think we know, fans, we know what cohort folks are in? Well, we'll get all the data, which is coming in on a regular basis, and it's due, I believe, as soon as tomorrow, if I remember correctly. I have so many dates in my head. But the general intent is to get feedback to you folks within the cohort of which day it is, Tuesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Friday, sooner than later, because we know that that's actually going to be more important to you right now than who the teacher of record is. In other words, who the teacher's assigned. You may not know that until later, but we recognize that the whole cohort's important because that allows for you to establish your individual needs as families for family support. The changes from DESE today don't make a lot of changes in terms of where we are. We are and did use our local data of being a low incident community. We are still at 1 active that I know of. I have not gotten the number this week since Monday because all my reports come in on Monday. I'll be sharing that with parents on a regular basis as well as charting it and looking at 2-week increments and reporting that out as part of the school committee vote to utilize data as part of our decisions. At this time, we're going to stay with the model that was voted by the department, by the school committee. Face shields are available, and we are currently utilizing masks only, but again, we will have areas where face shields are going to be potentially how to resolve an issue. Yes, usually you buy supplies for K-3 classrooms. We are being asked not to allow for certain supplies such as wipes, tissues, and paper towels to come into the building based on C-19, based on the COVID-19 situation. We'll keep you up to date on if we run out of that. Right now, tissues and paper towels and all that, we're in great shape. Wipes is a big concern only because most wipes are not allowed for students to be able to use. We're working with a third party to resolve that issue. I can have Wade answer something on that. Wade, I don't know if you want to mention the wipes because that's been an area that we've been really trying to work on.
Yes, good evening, everybody. For wipes, we're hoping to get some help from the middle school and the high school levels. So we're going to use wipes before class and after class. Each student comes in and does their thing, and then on their way out, they hit their desk again. Down at the elementary level, we're using a product called Fight Back. It's a safe product that we can use. We can spray down and then just wipe off the desk. So that's what we're looking to do at the elementary level. But a lot of it's up in the air right now, trying to actually just get those procedures down. In regards to cleaning the building, my cleaning protocol and procedures will be up on the website, on the school's website by the end of this week here. And that'll go into detail what we'll be doing to get the schools cleaned each and every day. It does include an electrostatic spray disinfectant that will be done throughout every building, all 5 buildings every night.
Thanks, Wade. So we're going to be publishing, per one of the questions, we'll be publishing a cleaning and disinfection plan. I think it's really important to recognize that schools have been under strict guidelines for cleaning for a long time, and it's been an issue for me as a superintendent, and one of the reasons why I have Wade Lazard as a director of facilities, and one of the reasons why, for example, this past spring and almost every year that I've been around with the start of the flu season, we go into this concept of deep cleaning. I'm not a big fan of that phrase. I think it's kind of it's not an appropriate phrase, or it's either cleaned or not cleaned. Because we have standards that we have to meet. So what's happening now is we're going to have to do it more often in order to stay with the movement of students as much as possible. Little Lance's questions. We're going to be having a meeting that probably will be around Little Lance's, but this one's specifically 3 days a week with an IEP. I have a meeting next week about Little Lance's because we're having some issues with the schedule. Please don't take that in a negative way. We will, in fact, try to address those questions on an individual basis. The question on notifying plans they will meet the PL3 placement to be 4 days versus a hybrid of 2 days. Casey, do you want to take that?
Certainly. Those letters should be coming out within the next week to families saying whether or not the child will be receiving 4 days or the 2 days. And again, we'll be reviewing everything on an individualized basis as needed from that point on.
Can we talk a little bit, Casey, about Little Lancers, if you know this? 4 days a week,
Yep.
4 days a week is what we're kind of looking at. But if we in fact have students that are going to be less time, I guess that's something that we'll be talking to families about.
Right. So as of right now, we're planning to follow the original model for Little Lancers, which is 4 days a week. They were typically closed on Wednesdays, but with our model now, it's looking like Mondays will be the day. If your child was slated for 3 days a week, we're hoping to have that happen. Again, a lot of it's going to be dependent upon the numbers that we have and things like that, which again, we'll be discussing in further detail next week, and we'll be sending out as much information as we have as soon as possible. But as of now, that is the plan.
Next question I have is on middle school band be handled. Let me just say that the best way for me to respond to that is to say, yep. Band is a big concern because the state is suggesting that anything to do with brass instruments and wood instruments, students have to be, quote, at least 10 feet apart, preferably in an open space, i.e. outside. I don't know how that happens in the cold unless they just wear a coat. So just bear with us. We do know and want to make sure that band is part of our daily program. Will there be a max number of students in the pre-K classes? All of our classrooms will have maxed out classrooms based on 6-foot social distancing. I can assure you that at the elementary level, we're going to be in very good shape. To be quite honest, I can assure you at pre-K to 12, we're going to be in good shape. But we're also adding some little things to each of the classrooms, especially with the younger kids, in order to try to support them staying within spaces. The supply list would be updated, as I noted earlier. And again, I think it's going to be different. Edgenuity right now is only a 6 to 12 option. We're not going with this K to 5, but we may. We're using Seesaw, and Google Classroom is one of the areas that we're really continuing to look at. Mass breaks will be, to be quite honest, as often as we can take them, especially during the month of September where it's going to be warm. There is no such thing as a, the whole school takes a mass break. We have to do it in a way where we're providing for some flexibility, but we'll be telling our teachers that we're going to be looking at something around every 45 minutes or less for mass breaks. Students participating in specials of any kind like music if they're remote. Yes, the answer to that is we're going to try to provide that as we can. Yes, we have questions about anxiety with students with COVID-19 being high. If they go back to school but can't handle it, can they switch to remote? Yes. I would say let's see if we can work together with the counselor and support staff at the high school to make that transition for your child. I think that's the most important thing. However, yes, to your question, we could make that change. We are going to be utilizing protocols about infections and that work off of 2 major items. Number 1, it is an honor system at home where you're talking to your child. We're going to be sending you a very specific list to ask your child every morning. And I can't require it by law. I can't force you to do it. I don't even know if you lied to me. But we're asking for all of us to be in this together. So we're going to start with everybody at home, starting with the basic conversation about how we're feeling today. We will then move, as students are coming into the school, we will have, quote, observers, just to make sure that we're looking at things like coughing and sneezing. We're still going to have coughing and sneezing, and it's not COVID-19. As a matter of fact, most coughing and sneezing is not related to COVID-19. If in fact we have a positive, then our protocols for a positive or a potential positive will go into play for either just that classroom or the entire building or multiple buildings because the family has multiple students in different buildings or the entire district. Then we potentially are moving to remote learning within 24 to 48 hours in order to make sure because remote learning is not just a switch that we turn on. We have to move everyone into that process. Wearing masks at recess is, as long as students are staying beyond the 6 feet, 10 feet preferred at recess, they'll be able to take off masks. But again, we have to make sure that we're teaching students this early on before we move to actually just opening it. Champion Summer Camp requires families to sign up full-time, enrolling the kids 5 days. Would you know if you would let families sign up only on days that the kids are at school? Yes, we are working with Champions to provide that service to you. It's important to set expectations for what full remote learning will look like for families. How flexible is the daily schedule? How often will teachers check in and teach students virtually? That is the big question. I started that earlier today. We're being asked to have the same amount of teachers teaching in 2 different locations with potentially 2 different protocols, and that's the number one question. Remote kindergarten screening will be taking place prior to the beginning of the school year. There's information coming on that as well. The rationale for grades, for all students. So this started with the DESI protocol of the 25th, saying that in fact it could be below. The rationale is my staff. The staff before students are in that grade level are not necessarily folks in their 20s and 30s. So I took the consideration that although the students of that age weren't required to do so, in the safety concerns for my staff, I thought that it should be required. Has a hybrid option been approved by Norton Schools? And will it be all remote for the school year? It is a hybrid option, but as an individual parent, you can choose remote. Survey was sent home. Hopefully you got it and you're responding to it. If you haven't, then please call the office. Positive cases will be handled according to adult or student positive case, and then from there, family situations, and then from there, where were the people? So that's based on a school or a classroom, a school, multiple schools, or the entire district. If parents select remote and then opt for hybrid, will they have the same teacher for both, or are they different teachers? Potentially, they could have different teachers, and we would have to do a transition time as well, because now students would be physically coming in to a hybrid model where students have been together already, and that's a big issue that we need to keep addressed. So in that particular case, as an example, and I know you may not like this, but as an example, we may request that you go through a self-quarantine before coming in, because then it gives us data and information. I guess that could be done also like the governor has done, where you can quarantine or go get a test. Because if we don't have any positive cases in that classroom, we don't want to add either anyways. Did I say that Ingenuity remote models are also being used for the hybrid model? What I'm suggesting is that there could be lessons within the hybrid model when students are home that uses Ingenuity. That's not necessarily the first priority, but it could be utilized, for example, for enrichment, because there's both enrichment lessons in there as well as supplemental for students that are struggling. Thanks for helping me clear that. We're trying to access, this is a question about will students have access to the live classrooms on their remote days? That's a question that we are trying to bring together through a protocol that requires that I can't just do it, I have to bargain it. If we opt for distant learning and the school goes to remote, will our students stay in their distant learning platform rather than being worked into a cohort? We'd probably have to wait and see on that, depending on how it happens. If it's a shutdown by the governor, then I would say that we would probably transition students in. But again, that could be that we could have some students in remote using one platform and students coming into another, and then create a cut date and make the change if needed. Refusal to wear masks and so on. I started it earlier. I'm going to the Norton School Committee with a policy on masks. We will work with students and when we work with families, but there will come a time when we say you have to wear it and you decide not to, then we will be calling parents to pick up their child and we'll make a recommendation that public education offering also includes remote and the child can stay home. In most cases, I would say this is going to be an older group question, not necessarily a younger. but I guess it could be in any case. It's still insubordination. If we tell a student to throw away their gum and then they want to, and mommy and daddy want to support that they can chew gum, but it has nothing to do with a learning disability, because we do have students who chew gum because of learning disabilities, i.e. medical, I should be clear, situations. Then I guess we'll be sitting down in the superintendent's conference room and deciding what it should be. I mean, we're trying to protect everyone as much as we can. It's not about politics for me. It's about, I have a responsibility to 2,447 students and 400 employees. And I think taking the norm of wearing masks in a public place where you are together, coming from many different places, is what we should adhere to. Gloves will be offered, and they are latex free. Ordering, I already ordered the school supplies for the school. They were to be delivered directly to the school in my child's name. Well, what happened to those supplies? Hopefully they're boxed in your child's names, and I will make sure that it's put aside and it's still yours. Continuous question about remote learning and teachers. Again, it's about the technology, and then clearly having discussions with the teachers union that this is something that we really want to do, and how do we go about doing it, and does it happen on the first day? It's not as simple as just having a group of students. We don't, I guess I should interject for a second. I think there's this understanding by some, maybe not all of you, but that we are just standing and delivering education every day in front of kids. And that's the reason why I think the word synchronous and asynchronous has played into a lot of negativity within the public. Teachers are with their students for their classes, but they're in groups, one-to-one, testing, presentations. It's not just to stand and deliver. And so that's some of the problem with some of the streaming. But could you do something like have the kids coming in, and then the students in the classroom have headsets on and are doing their work on a computer or not on a computer, because we're not going to be just behind a computer during hybrid only when you're in the building, although we do use it as a resource, as many of you know. But how do we take, how do we move to then, opening up a Zoom, and then you have to wait for the students to come on, and then at the secondary level, that's a flip from class to class to class to class. Our high school kids have 7 different teachers. Our middle school students have 7 different teachers, or more actually, in both cases. So that becomes the problem on the synchronous, asynchronous between the models. Yeah, earlier I mentioned students not on an IEP but having higher needs, potentially being able to have more in-person interaction. Could you explain how those kids are identified? So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education created, quote, an at-risk kind of list of situations. So students with DCF custody, students who have situations in their home through legal issues, students who are having issues with being fed, students who are in fact becoming further depressed, anxiety. So we would be utilizing some of those protocols. But again, the IEP would be the first protocol, 504s, and then we have to work through. One of my intentions is also to try to expand the school day in a way where we can support students because of loss or regression. And that would be open to all students in the district. And I'm working out a plan to try to see if I can get that started probably sometime in late September, early October, once we're into the transition and once we have some more information about what we're really going to be doing long-term. A lot of questions about family walkthroughs. I know it's important for us. It's kind of a really cool thing that we do in Norton when we open up our buildings to kids on different days. That's probably going to be limited, but I will be planning principal meetings, and I'm going to be asking the principals also to work with kind of showing off the building and all that. And then not yet in concrete, but I will be working to provide some time, if I can be successful, prior to the first day of school, some type of Zooming and virtual meeting between students in their classes and their classroom teachers at all levels. Once school starts, if student notifies you that someone's tested positive or someone in their home tested positive, will you be informing everyone that there was an instance of this? Okay, so this is another one of the hard ones. I still have to follow every federal requirement for not announcing any specific information about anyone who has a medical situation. So the protocols for us would be very general. Of course, I would be asking you as families to please stay off of social media announcing that you know someone who has it or creating the rumor. I'm sorry to even be saying it because I know most of you don't. I will have no problem calling out someone for informing the public about a student's name or a family's name. And to be quite honest, I'd probably be pretty harsh about it. We can't just have people making kids have more anxiety and feeling depressed because everybody else is then the issue open up, such as bullying and all of those topics. And right now, our kids don't need any of that. They need us to be the grown-ups that just, we receive the information, we give you all the information that we can, and we ask you to trust us on that information. Yes, Nick, I will be more specific with the questions, reading the questions. I apologize, I'm just trying to get through most of them. For those that are doing hybrid, now how will 504 accommodations be made on the remote learning days? That's a work in progress because it means something different to every single student. We have 504 accommodations that are more about things like time versus actual physical space versus other type of accommodations. So further information to come on that. That's a great question. Any questions to do, and I'm just saying this in general, anything to do with Chromebooks or technology. Every student registered in Norton Public Schools, either hybrid or remote, will have in grades 2 through 12 a Chromebook. Some of the Chromebooks will be the Chromebooks they used in the past. They'll be returned to them because there's a back order in technology for every school. And in pre-K, K, and 1, everyone will have an iPad, or in 1, we'll use some Chromebooks if we have to. The model of what that's going to look like and how we're going to distribute those will be coming out as well. Great question, and thank you for asking. What can the parents do to be helpful and supportive to NPS? So I so appreciate that question, I can't tell you. First of all, if you see any of my administrators, thank them for working their tails off. Second would be, let's use good information to make decisions. So please utilize our Let's Talk About a Rumor. If you do it anonymously, it's hard for me to respond to you. Today I received a message right away from the morning meeting. There's a little misinformation. Maybe the way I said it, not well received or received in a certain way, about the hybrid model, and that it was going more days remote, and nothing's changed. Right now, the hybrid model guarantees that for 2.5 days out of 5, children are with teachers. So half a day on the Monday, because I need the time in the afternoon with the teachers, at least in the beginning, and then Tuesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Friday, live in the buildings. That has not changed in our model. Now it's just a matter of which cohort your child is in. And I would say the last item for that on how to be helpful is when the time comes, we're probably going to need some family supports, or I should say volunteer support. We're not going to be doing volunteers right away. We're just trying to get our schools back running, but I anticipate that we'll be doing some of that at some point. And so anything that you can do to help would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for that question. Is the device that will be used for remote learning grades 3 restricted from games, videos, YouTube, etc.? We have our Go Guardian system, and a lot of those things are already off of our systems, but we use our Go Guardian, which tracks our students and where they actually are going to. It's a system that works for us in the past. It's been able for us to have nice discussions with families, but those would be some of the protocols that we'd be using. Plans for lunch. Yes, we will provide food, both for hybrid and remote. Specifics of that are, we're working on grab and go for the elementaries and actually, or delivery and eating in the classrooms. On good days, potentially going outside. Of course, we have to be careful about things like bees and all of that stuff. For the secondary level, it's probably going to be more of a grab and go and setting up, quote, lunch zones in areas, including classrooms. There's going to be a lot of trust in the older kids. I don't think that's a bad thing as a former high school teacher and principal. I think they very often work off of trust in a good way, not in the bad way, but we still need supervision. But yes, breakfast and lunch still to be provided remotely, probably a drop-off or a pickup. By drop-off, I would mean potentially using our transportation to drop it in zones and areas. It can be picked up. Or actually doing what we've been doing since March 16th, which is a grab and go where you come to the school. If districts go remote at any point this year, such as flu season, will that include preschool? Will they still be attending? That's to be determined. It would really depend on how bad the flu season is. I think the biggest issue with the flu season is many of us think the flu season, and I should say doctors do, not me, MDs, they actually think the flu season could be a good thing because we're using things like gloves and masks and social distancing. If that's true, the real concern then becomes what is the flu versus what is COVID-19, and that will be a big issue that we will have to try to address. Spouses are teachers outside of this district. As you know, systems are still deciding the next step. If we said we wanted our kids to attend in a hybrid plan, can we still change our decision to fully remote? Yes, you can. So it is easier for the system, for us, to move you from hybrid to remote. But don't forget, the other thing is to also take a look at what's happening around trying to support families with our Champions program and other things that we're going to be announcing in the coming weeks. Of course, there's a cost to that, and I'm sorry for that. But yes, we are going to, public education is very public right now. It's a phrase I've used over and over again. I fully believe that. Currently, we are not seeing unenrollment taking place to go to private schools in Norton or to even school choice out, but I can assure you, I had a conversation this morning with a set number of superintendents in the region, and public education is very public, and if we aren't flexible and we aren't understanding, I believe we're going to see, as the Boston Globe said, people take options and go elsewhere, and that is something that is not something I accept, and my role is to try to do everything I can to make sure that Norton is the place that gets it done. Is a specific cohort what's better for families? Is there a way to have a student put in that cohort versus the other? Yeah, you can put in that cohort. That's fine. We're going to try to support you with that, but there's no guarantees still. There are still issues getting Chromebooks, but we do have a plan for getting Chromebooks. And I'll give you a story. It's actually personal, so I might as well tell you it this way. My daughter is going to 9th grade at Norton High. She passed in her 8th grade Chromebook. She's going to get her Chromebook back until the new ones come in. That's what we'll be doing district-wide. Middle school sports right now is up in the air, and so is everything to do with high school sports. Yes, we will be doing grading. This is a question about frequency on school brains about grading. We will, in fact, have a grading policy that is going to stay very much the traditional grading policy of students, of teachers entering grades, students taking their assessments, and so on and so forth. So less of a flexible situation than we had in the spring. It's more traditional. So a continuation of the question about IEPs. A student who's in a sub-separate program are receiving very specific information about 4 days a week. A student that's an inclusion right now, we are not there yet to say that a student's going to be getting 4 days a week. We are still working to address some of those issues. High anxiety for students. Will there be scheduled guidance time to assist with the unusual college choice and application time? Yes, we'll be probably utilizing a lot more of the remote presentations like we did in the spring, which actually were very highly attended. But yes, one of our goals is to try to implement some of the more anxiety senior issues going on. Again, not knowing what the fall of 21 is going to look like yet. But assisting students in that college process, which is something that we really improved on in the last couple of years. Tomorrow, by Monday, maybe by Friday, today is Wednesday, so maybe by Friday, or no later than Monday, you will receive, this is a question to do with, can I see what the preschool classrooms will look like before school? So in general, we're going to give you what classrooms look like at the elementary, middle, and high school. We didn't do one for preschool, but I'm sure, Casey, if we could put something together for that, we could share that with families as well. How will the school nurses be affected and supported during this? Well, they are our first responders in the building, professionally trained. We are now in the auspices of hiring a 6th nurse for the district who will be responsible for supporting them as a colleague and responsible to my office for COVID-19 response situations. That is a new approach. Not hearing that from other places, but we think that If we have a nurse out, we have a nurse who can cover it. If we have a situation where a nurse is in fact sick, we have potentially someone as well as our regular potential substitute. So we have added a 6th nurse. For those of you wondering how we did that, that is from savings in funds from folks who have left us or retired from us. And then when we hired new people, we saved money and we created the position. What would be the level of peer interaction for those students on full remote? That is a question that I really can't address in terms of if they're fully remote. There's potential of that becomes less and less unless we are doing something around synchronous in any way, shape, or form. Music program at the Yale or any extras for that matter is the question. What will happen with the music? Right now, we have no intentions of closing anything or not doing it. It's just a matter of how we do it. And that may have to, for example, be more with online and that type of thing. But our schedules are all about trying to make sure that our specials are still being done in our schools for our students. In moving to remote, as you said, is not a switch. It's not such a switch. Does that mean there are a couple of days where students will not attend? Yes, we could potentially switch right away. We could potentially switch only secondary, but not elementary, or we're just switching elementary on right away, but not secondary. Those are kind of things that we have to think about how to do. If we don't have school, and I say it's not going to be a remote day because maybe we're not ready on that day, then it is a makeup day later on. Right now, our school calendar is a traditional calendar in many ways. However, both February vacation and April vacation are definitely up in the air to be discussed further, including that we are not closed. I don't see how we're going to be traveling all over the world. But then again, maybe we'll need a break in April at that time, depending on what we're all doing. I don't know yet. Hopefully we can get that answer to you. Are there situations where kids will be less than 6 feet apart? At this time, I can't tell you 100%, but I'm pretty close to saying our classrooms are at 6 feet, lunches are at 6 feet, or more than 6 feet as well. Recess is always a catch-21 one, but that's going to be a lot of training with the kids. And group work, students are not allowed to be in group work. In the classroom, they have to be facing forward at all times at their own seat. So they'd have to do group work from at least 6 feet of social distancing. And that's troubling for me to say because that's not how we teach. When do we find out what quota our kids will be in for the days to attend? As soon as the schedules are done and we get our requests done, I would expect that we work on that sooner than later and turn that around to you. It's more important for us to tell you the cohort than it is to tell you the teacher. The teacher could be a name that's not added until 2-3 days before we even start. It is what it is. Are the start and end times different this year? No, at this time, there's no changes to start or end times at any of the schools. My concern is that the busing is going to lead to some late arrivals, AM and PM, but we're going to have to fix that as we go like we do every year. Yes, question on kindergarten screening. Will be appropriately physical distancing, mask, symptoms. Yes, there's a checkoff list for the symptoms that you have to answer before you come into the building for that type of situation. That's done at home, and we ask the questions. Then it is physically distanced in terms of 6 feet, and actually there's also dividers and masks that take place in these types of situations. Question on live streaming, I'll continue to say the same thing. We're still not there on live streaming, but we are definitely, as part of the, and this question specific to the virtual learning plans, again, that's an issue of staffing. Not a good answer, not the right answer even, but the fact is, how do we do it? By having 3 different models of teaching and learning with the same amount of staff. And right now, I don't see any assistance from the federal government that would allow for me to hire some staff. And then my concern would be to find qualified staff. So think about, this question has to do, can you walk me through how every 45-minute mask will work in the schools? Sure. So depending on how many students are actually in the classroom, some of our classrooms will be at easily 6 feet and probably closer to 9 to 10 feet social distancing. Not all, but again, depending on how many students actually come back and then dividing that into the different cohorts. So a mask break might look like one group of students social distancing, going into the hallway, social distancing, going outside. going to a larger area. Or the potential, and we've asked our local Board of Health, that if a classroom is at more than 10 feet, can they do it in their actual classroom? So that's, again, a medical decision or scientific decision, but we're working to try to address that. So high school teachers cannot switch classes. That's almost impossible. It's going to probably be students changing classes. Middle school and everywhere else, more than likely teachers moving, but that decision hasn't been made final, but that's the direction that I'm going in. Question, if we picked hybrid, but my child doesn't do well, can I do well in the school because of the new restrictions? Can we switch to remote? Yes. Question, I broke up. Did you say that K and first graders will be asked to wear masks to protect the teachers? That is correct. Will Chromebooks be distributed before school opens? Yes. Will there be parent training Zoom on remote learning? Yes. Stay tuned, probably multiple. If the district were to, we might actually also do like a video type, so something we can send you and then you can watch it on your own. A lot of people like that too. If the district were to go from hybrid to all virtual, would there be a transition or would it just happen right away? There'd be a transition, but it'd be a very short transition. My husband and I are home on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Can we request our school to schedule our child to remote on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Yes, you can. Is it guaranteed? No. You should put it as part of your response if it's that specific. Thank you for the compliment on the masks. I know it's not everybody's favorite comment. Thank you for stressing that we are all in this together and must help one another. I firmly believe that. Thank you for saying that. Siblings with different last names will be together the same days. Yes, please just make sure that we know that as much as you can. And if not, go to the Let's Talk. Give me the names of the kids. I'll make sure that it happens on my end. What happens to the child's learning school requirements if he or she or family members test positive is required to quarantine for 2 weeks? That's a great question. What I'm hoping to do is transition that student into the remote learning with very little break. So I'm going to have a plan for those types of situations sooner than later. But yes, we are looking at that situation. The school year is not extended. This is a question, will the school year be extended given the late start? No. What happened was the Commissioner of Education cut a deal, he's the only one who can do this, not me, with the teachers unions, the American Federation of Teachers, the Boston Teachers Union, and the Massachusetts Teachers Associations. Mass Teachers Association has met most of the districts in Massachusetts. BTU is its own. He cut a deal that the first 10 days were for staff only to come in and prepare for PPEs and how to use them, how to provide them with students, all safety protocols within the building, from lunches to bathrooms and all of that, as well as begin to develop their curricula around supporting the needs of those students' models that we've provided. So the school year will not be extended, except if I said earlier, let's say a boiler goes out in a building. I may use that as a snow day and not just a remote day because of where some students are in the model. With the week of the 16th, 17th, and 18th, that's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. That's a week where we really have to take a look at the model. Will we just start with the Wednesday, Friday kids, and therefore the Tuesday, Thursday kids only have one day and we don't do a remote? Or where those 3 days will we do a remote? I think more than likely we just keep it because you folks are all counting on us to keep the cohorts together. So I think that's what will probably be happening. We will post the questions on both sessions on our webpage. I believe that's where we've been doing it. The Chromebooks are still back ordered. There's a question about Chromebooks I answered earlier. They're still back ordered, but we do have a plan for all students to have the proper technology. The comment about I don't want the name, this is a question I responded to about an incident. I just want to know there was an instance. Yes, you have to be provided some type of a statement for me about an instance, but you may not know it's third grade. It might just be JCS. We had an incident at JCS. That we may be able to reflect on those types of things because it's important for us to react to a public health issue by having some sanity around our next steps as a school district, as families, as a community, especially as a low incident community right now. Kids eating lunch is the question. Elementary kids, right now we're looking at grab and go or delivery and not necessarily in the cafeteria. Will MCAS still run this year? Oh, goodness. I won't say your name, we just said it, but I hope you call everybody that you can think of at the State House and support the 4-year moratorium on MCAS. It's a bill filed by a representative from Attleboro. He does not represent Norton. He's a former colleague of mine. He's helped to fight it. There are signatures. Please call your state rep. Please call the local elected officials. I am not suggesting we can't have accountability. I just don't know how we can hold kids to, on average, 8 to 10 days of testing while we're doing all of this. But those above me have not made that decision unless it becomes a legislative act. If a student currently does not have a 504, what's the process to get one? You would file that with the student's guidance office, adjustment counselor in the schools. You can even use the principals, and then the process starts for the need. Let me see, I'm trying to utilize the technology here because I just, this person says, yes, as a medical professional, we do think the flu season will be not as severe. I hope you're right. Thank you for saying that. All students will have technology before the start of school or as they come into school. Do not worry about a child not having a Chromebook. We're all set. We just are using some of the older ones and not the brand new ones. We'll make the transition later. We're very lucky because we took the 8th grade and we outright purchased them. And so that just gives us those 200 that we need, and that made a huge difference district-wide. Will time be spent during the first couple of weeks reviewing the iPads, Chromebooks? Yes, as well as with parents. I said earlier, I'm hoping we could be creative and do some videos with parents on how to use it and all of that. I think it would just probably answer a lot of questions for folks. Will late assignments be accepted as they were in the spring without penalty? Probably not. We're probably going to have a little bit more accountability. Of course, I am a believer that accepting a late assignment from a student is better than not accepting it at all. As a teacher, my protocol was always to give you some type of a penalty, but the idea is to learn. So I'm going to continue to push that. It's about learning, especially with all of these things that are happening around us. Should we purchase a Chromebook just in case we're not in the front end? You don't need to purchase one. If you would like to, you can, but you do not need to purchase technology for your children. How many days will a hybrid student go to school? They'll go to school 2 days a week, and they'll remote as a total class together on Monday. So Monday's a remote day, it's a half a day, and then Tuesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Friday, and then the opposite day they're home. When we will know teachers, I have to tell you right now, I know that's really important to families and to kids, but who the teachers are is going to be very last minute, and most of it. It really revolves around, I am currently working with requests for family medical leave and ADA under both federal for employees. I'm not going to say how many employees I have because I don't want to start, but you know, it's a process. People have to see their doctor. People have to file the paperwork. I have to review it. I have to take a look at things like reasonable accommodations and all of that stuff. And I'm required to do so by law. Nothing passed on MCAS was the question. Will students be able to bring in their own lunches and snacks? Yes. If parents select all remote Edgenuity, is that model guaranteed for the whole year? No, not guaranteed. It would depend. Right now, I guess the question is it would depend on the state of the COVID. So I want you to think about this way. The governor, we closed schools for 2 weeks. Then all of a sudden it became 3 weeks, then 6 weeks, and then we were done for the year. We had been asking for a governor to make an announcement about closing schools, and instead, Attleboro and myself and all the superintendents in the area, we got together and everybody said, it's either 1 week or 2 week. And we went with the 2 week, and then it became longer, as you all know. There's this constant local control thing in Massachusetts. Is there a risk that not enough teacher staff will return to or agree to come back to in-person schooling? Well, so in general, there are individual decisions that people are making under the law that they can do it and under their contract. But if you're talking about more of the big picture, both sides are, both the Norton Teachers Association, which represents the teachers and the paraprofessionals, and my office on behalf of the school committee are working. We have our actual working meeting tomorrow. Our job is to take a look at the big hot items that the two sides can come to an agreement on, and hopefully be able to have those agreements before the first day of school. it's a process. It's not because either side is stuck in one way or another. It's just we're trying to figure out the best agreement for both sides under Chapter 150E. In the hybrid model, what will the level of student-teacher interaction be on the remote days? We're working on that, but we have a number of ideas, but some of that right now is that the students would be on their own. That is a potential. An elementary kid's going to be online the entire school day on remote days. So our schedules that we're trying to look at is to have on remote days a structure of schedule that includes breaks for students on a regular basis like we would do in our classrooms. And so it's a day, but right now we're not looking on those remote days for elementary, in my opinion, to be fully just, students being stuck behind a computer. If the hybrid students have a snow day, will the distance learners also have to take the day off? More than likely, yes, because of continuity, but that's a question that's way out for me right now. Sorry to say. Only because of continuity of where the students are. Community service requirements for seniors, same for reduced, eliminated. Right now, I have not made a recommendation on that, but I can think of some community service hours that would be pretty safe around students, but this may be an area that we have to look at like we did in the spring. More to come on that. I'll make a note of it right now for you. With kids taking meds, will parents be allowed to drop them off to nurse with all the kids? Yes, we'll do the same protocols. Here, the question with medication is going to be making sure that our protocols for that are very succinct in terms of adults coming into the building. But yes, we're still nursing, using our nursing still. Kids can still go to the nurse. Kids can still go in there for everything from, the diabetic medication to headache medication to whatever medical issues students are having. We will not have students responsible for bringing their meds to the nurse. That is never a good idea. We'll utilize some type of a plan, potentially utilize something that allows for medications to come in on a longer staggered time for a longer period of time in the buildings. And then we revert to giving you the meds back. Hope that helps. Under remote model, days students are in building, will they be in one class for an entire day or moving? It will depend on the level. Elementary, it'll be predominantly in the classroom, one classroom. Middle school, I'm leaning towards a classroom and the teachers move. Secondary is students are moving. Yeah, there's another question about if the remote days from the side and the hybrid model has to take a snow day. Again, I think we would be consistent as a district there, that we would count it all as just a snow day for whatever reason. Again, it's not that black and white for me yet, so hold off on that if you don't mind. So if you give up space now on a bus because you're working remote and can drive your kids, is it possible to join the bus at the later date? Yes, if you are required to have transportation under the law. If you're a pay and write student, it would only be with availability. Masks at their desks are something about, this is a question about can they take their masks at their desks, breaks at their desks? Yes. One of the ideas that we want to do with students is over time, teach them how to do that, especially our younger students. How will transitioning from class to class look like? Another very good question. If it's staggered, the amount of minutes that students are going to have with their classrooms will be hit. In other words, there'll be less time in front of the students. So we have to try to figure out a model of best way to release students. Remember, secondary students in particular, they have their own individual classrooms. So you might be in college prep biology, honors English, and AP US history. You're all over the building. So we're trying to figure out the best way. One way is to route the building with one-way flow with markers of 6 feet. We already know that that's going to take longer to get there, but at least you wouldn't be the picture that you saw in Georgia. There was a statement made on the earlier call that referenced reduced student parking spaces. Is this true? Can you explain why? I'm not suggesting that we're going to have reduced student parking spaces at this time. I think the question comes down to making sure that students have appropriate boundaries, if you will, around that 6-foot situation. But right now, it's something that I'm putting off to the side. I may actually do the opposite, where we could potentially have more students drive to school because of they don't want to take the bus, or because they now have a car. My concern with that is always that they start to ride with each other. All right, trying to get to the last few questions. It's always okay. This is a question about if pre-K student won't keep their mask on, is it okay for them to go home? Yes, we're always going to work with families. This is not just a black and white issue in terms of it's just this and this. We're talking about a preschool child. The child may be a student who's in preschool because they're a peer, or they may be there because they're needing the services. We're going to work with parents. Social distancing at the high school, and how would that be prevented? Again, I think what we're going to see is a lot of markers, students wearing masks, and then releasing in a staggered way, only in such that students will be flowing in the same direction. If you've already put in your survey, can you contact if we do have requests for specific cohorts? Yes, please do. Yeah, student pickup procedures, same as previous, yes, but social distancing, yes, and in a couple of our schools, entering from different spaces. So that's going to be different. That's going to mean something different depending on the grade. For example, the middle school may have 3 different areas that they're entering from, not just one in the morning because of the drop-off of the buses. Same thing with the high school. If it's a car pickup and drop-off, then again, yes, we'll be utilizing probably some different pickup and drop-offs for cars. You could put the request, where do you put the request to be in a certain cohort? You can do so by doing it in the survey or not. If not, then please go to the Let's Talk and put it in there, and we will attempt to make sure that we do our due diligence. Will there be testing in grades, and how do you help students who might be struggling? That's a really big question for all of us. Yes, there will be testing. Yes, there will be grades. What I'm hoping to see is different types of testing, more around presentation, more around project-based learning, and less of the, if you will, rote learning. Question about bathroom monitoring at the high school so that masks are worn and limited kids at once in there. Yes, there'll be limitations on kids going to bathrooms. I'm sure I'm going to be facing questions on that because I've already had to, but it's COVID-19, so I'm going to go with the rules that apply to that. Will they be monitored to the best of our ability? But again, this is going to come down to high school students starting to make decisions that, like they always do, that if they don't want to follow them, then they'll have to deal with the consequences that comes with it. Will vacations be reduced to accommodate days missed? No, not days missed, but potentially an earlier calendar. Snow days could happen, or they could be moved to remote days. Why? I want to say this in a nice way. I don't know a town that loses electricity more often than Norton. Hopefully you're getting a couple of laughs out of that, because it is, I don't think I've had a week in Norton in the wintertime that I haven't worried about electricity not being able to work. So that would be a reason in a snowstorm where we would just say it's a snow day, because I couldn't guarantee that kids could even log in. We will not spend necessarily time reviewing. This is a question about reviewing work and so on and so forth, but we do have a plan to look at student work early on to get them acclimated, if you will, to being with each other. I know that they're with each other in many cases in the neighborhoods. Trying to think, I just lost my space. Sorry if I missed some questions. Oh, I think I just found it. Bathroom. We will be, per the school committee vote, this is a question on when will the hybrid model be evaluated to assess the efficacy and potential for transition to in-person learning. We have a mandate from the school committee to do it as a data collection every 2 weeks and as a report to the school committee for an update 6 weeks after the start of school on September 16th. Snow days, as I said earlier, up in the air. All grades right now are slated to start on 9/16, so that includes kindergarten. Parents can't, this is a question, am I mistaken, or did you state that parents could select days to attend and days for remote based on parents' work schedule? We have suggested to you that you can make that request. I can't guarantee that you're gonna get it, but we understand that that's something that we're looking at, because one family might get assigned Tuesday, Thursday, and if we call them and say, can you do Wednesday, Friday, it might not be a problem. Well, for you, it is a problem. So it's a work in progress, but we're trying to be family friendly. Daughter is concerned going to the Yale, coming from the eastern side of town, concerned about buses being late. She will miss the beginning of school. How will this be accommodated given all the transportation challenges for kids? Please assure your daughter that the superintendent says that anytime she feels that she's not getting supported, she should tell me. We just have to work together. Again, yes, that could become a problem. I'm a little bit more worried. Usually happens is more of an issue at the JCS than anywhere else in the district. We will work and see. If we only have 20 to 23 students in our buses, these buses are going to flow pretty quickly. It's the, what do we have to do after students get off? Do we have to clean them at that point as recommended? Or is there another recommendation that's coming out? We're also waiting on that as well, because it's about a 7 to 10 minute stop to just clean the bus before the next pickup. So you can see how this becomes a problem. So students will go a half day on Monday during the hybrid and 2 full days. That is correct. So your child, if you chose the hybrid on Monday during the half day schedule, your child will see all of their peers via remote, so that they have kind of a kickoff to the week together. And then they move into the Tuesday, Thursday, and Wednesday, Friday physically in the school. Question on, can we clarify the grab and go lunch and drop off? We may have lunches dropped off in class for students. So students would be picking their lunches earlier in the day, maybe even the day before. The lunches would be put together, because students cannot walk into a cafeteria and put lunches onto their plate. It has to be prepared. So that's what I'm talking about. Are you changing curriculum, taking equity, diversity, inclusion into consideration? That's a great question. So we just started equity and diversity training with our administrators this summer with a third party, really looking at cultural competency. We are, in fact, continue to be an inclusion district. Most of our special education students are fully included in the general education population for service delivery and for teaching and learning. So yes, we are looking at curriculum changes going forward. I don't know if you'll see those right away on day one. I can assure you that the issue of equity and diversity is a big topic for me. We'll do what we can, which will be a lot more, I think, than we've been doing. And let me just get to a couple of more, only because I had a hard stop right around 7 o'clock. I will get an answer on the gators. When will we know if gators are going to be allowed or not? I will get you an answer as soon as I can. I started the information earlier by saying, based on discussions I had earlier today with the parents, I then moved it over to a third party. And right now, the suggestion was masks only, not gators. But I want to do a little bit more digging before I just announce it. All right, folks. We are still looking for a lot of answers to questions. I know that. A couple of different things that I want you to be assured of is please use the Let's Talk. We've been averaging about 101 Let's Talks a day. We are responding to them as quickly as we can. All administrators are being asked to continue to respond to email questions from parents on a consistent basis and to turn them around as fast as possible. I will plan another one of these after releasing some information over the next 3 to 5 days. So I would expect maybe next week. It'll be a hard working week for us because we have to fix and look at these cohorts and look at all that information. And then by the following week, hopefully have another one of these. We'll also continue to add to our Q&A section just to support the idea that we could say any questions about transportation, please go to the Q&A form on the district website, look at that first. Then if you don't have an answer that's specific to you, reach out and we'll answer the question. Casey, thank you so much. Wade, thank you so much. I've seen both of you today. We had about 150 participants this morning, about 175 it looks like this afternoon or this evening. Thank you to all the families. Please stay safe, and we'll get back to you with information ASAP. Thanks again.